The fire alarm screamed, and the emergency shutters slammed shut, trapping a man on the 75th floor. The fire department was helpless. The building's high-tech security had become a death trap, and the only person who could save him was the old man hanging outside on a rope. Welcome to The Everyday Hero. Before we begin this story of a glass tower turned into a prison and the unexpected salvation that came from the sky, tell us in the comments what city you're joining us from, and if you believe that heroes are sometimes hidden in the most invisible places, be sure to subscribe. The Aethelred Tower was a glass dagger plunged into the heart of the city. 100 stories of smooth, futuristic perfection. It was a monument to human ambition and technology. Inside, million-dollar deals were brokered and the world's fate was decided in climate-controlled boardrooms. Outside, there was Elias. Elias was in his 70s. His face was a map carved by wind and sun. His hands were calloused and his movements were slow, but never wasted. He was one of 2 men who cleaned the tower's exterior. Every day he defied gravity, working in his own vertical, silent world, far from the noise and chaos of the city below. To the ants scurrying on the sidewalks, he was just a speck, an unidentifiable dot moving against the sky.
On that day,
In the 75th floor boardroom, a young tech executive named Khan was praising the building's new security system. Khan was its architect. The Aethelred Tower, he said with gleaming eyes, is now the most secure skyscraper in the Western Hemisphere. A self-sufficient, sealed, and impenetrable fortress. In his presentation, he highlighted the titanium-reinforced fire shutters protecting the server rooms. In the event of a fire, he explained, these shutters deploy in seconds, completely isolating the room from the outside world. The oxygen levels drop, and the fire extinguishes itself. Genius, isn't it? As the boardroom applauded him, just outside Khan's office window, Elias was checking the steel cables of his platform. The knots he used were ancient and complex, knots forgotten even by most sailors. He tightened each one with a focus as if his life depended on it. Because it did. At precisely 3:32 p.m., the genius system Khan had praised turned into a nightmare. It all started in the main server room on the 75th floor. A small spark from an overloaded server rack erupted into an electrical fire, spewing dense, toxic smoke. And Khan, at that exact moment, was inside the room inspecting a server. The sirens wailed, deafening. Red strobes painted the corridors in flashes of light and darkness. The moment Khan turned for the door, the titanium shutters he was so proud of slammed down with a deafening thud from the ceiling and floor. The room became a steel coffin. The smoke thickened, reducing visibility to 0. Down on the street, panic erupted. Dozens of fire trucks wailed, their sirens tearing the city fabric. The fire chief was yelling desperately into his radio. "We're at the 75th floor, but our ladders only reach the 50th. The chopper can't get close because of the wind shear. We can't breach the shutters from the outside. The glass is bulletproof." Khan, the architect, was trapped inside the fortress of his own creation. High above, on the 82nd floor, Elias watched the scene unfold on his platform. He heard the fire department's helpless chatter on his small radio. He looked at the chaos below, and then at the small ventilation grate where smoke was beginning to seep. He understood the geometry of the problem better than anyone on the ground. He wasn't an engineer, but he had spent decades on mountains. He knew how to read cliffs, crevasses, and impossible angles. And what he was looking at now was a cliff made of glass and steel. He picked up his radio, switching to the emergency frequency he never used. His voice was calm, clear against the howling wind. "Fire command. This is facade maintenance. I have a visual on the man." A moment of silence on the other end. "Who is this?" "Get down from there immediately. It's not safe. Coming down is a waste of time." Elias said evenly. "I can get to him." "That's impossible. There's at least a 30-meter horizontal distance between you, and the winds are too strong." Elias looked down at where the fire chief was standing. He didn't explain a plan. He didn't offer a resume. He said only one thing: "The mountains are windier." And then he got to work. The firefighters below, watching through binoculars, expected to see a window washer panicking. Instead, they saw a master preparing his craft. Elias unclipped his standard safety line and began to re-rig his entire platform. He took a length of worn 9mm rope from his canvas bag and tied an alpine butterfly knot in the middle, a loop that wouldn't slip or weaken under a multi-directional load. He attached it to the building's maintenance anchor with a speed and confidence that was mesmerizing. The fire chief lowered his binoculars, his mouth slightly agape. "Get a spotter on him," he commanded his crew. "That's not a window washer's knot. That's a rescue knot." Elias wasn't just working. He was flowing. He created a complex system of pulleys and counterweights using his own platform as a mobile anchor. He was transforming his simple cleaning rig into a high-angle rescue system. He took out a small, worn hammer and a pry bar, securing them to his belt. Then, he looked across the vast, glass face of the building toward the server room window, a tiny square in the distance. He calculated the wind, the angle, the momentum he would need. He was about to perform a pendulum swing, a controlled, terrifying fall across the face of the building. He gave a final tug on his main line, spoke quietly into his radio, "Stand clear," and stepped off the platform. For a heart-stopping second, he plummeted. A collective gasp rose from the crowd below. But he didn't fall far. The rope caught, and he began to swing in a huge, graceful arc across the building. The wind howled, trying to throw him against the glass, but Elias moved with it, using his feet to push off the slick surface, guiding his trajectory. To the executives watching from their windows, it was an act of insanity. To the firefighters on the ground, it was an act of impossible skill. To Elias, it was just another Tuesday. The memory of the wind felt the same as it did on the north face of K2. The cold bite of fear tasted the same as it did in the Andes. He landed on the narrow ledge outside the server room with the soft thud of a cat. He anchored himself immediately. Inside, he could see a faint shape. Khan, slumped against the far wall. There wasn't much time. He pulled out his hammer. This was specialized, triple-paned glass, designed to withstand a bomb blast. Brute force was useless, but Elias wasn't using brute force. He knew that every structure, no matter how strong, had a weakness. He began tapping the hammer lightly around the edges of the window, listening. Not with his ears, but with his hand, feeling the vibrations. He was searching for the resonance point, a tiny flaw in the tempering. After a few tense seconds, he found it, a spot near the upper left corner where the vibration felt different. Duller, he raised the hammer high, and with one perfectly placed, powerful strike, he hit the spot. A spiderweb of cracks erupted from the point of impact. The window, the impenetrable barrier, held for a second, then imploded inward with a low whoosh. Elias worked quickly, clearing the remaining shards of glass. He tossed a small emergency rebreather mask, which he carried for chemical cleaning jobs, into the room. "Put it on," he yelled over the wind. He rigged a makeshift harness from a length of webbing and lowered it in. Getting the disoriented and weakened Khan out of the window and onto the narrow ledge was the most dangerous part. But Elias's movements were sure, his voice calm and commanding, guiding the terrified executive. Slowly, carefully, they began their descent on Elias's rig. It wasn't fast, it wasn't elegant, but it was steady. As they passed the 50th floor, a cheer erupted from the firefighters below. As they touched the ground, the entire street, filled with thousands of onlookers, broke into thunderous applause. Paramedics rushed Khan away. The fire chief, a man who had seen everything, walked over to Elias. The old man was already quietly coiling his ropes, his movements as precise and unhurried as they had been 100 stories in the sky. "I have been doing this job for 30 years, the chief said, his voice filled with awe. "I have never, ever seen anything like that. The knots, the swing. Who the hell are you?" Elias finished coiling a rope and looked at the chief. His pale blue eyes held no pride, only a deep, abiding weariness. "Just a man who doesn't like dirt on windows," he said. He shouldered his canvas bag, gave a slight nod, and began to walk away, melting into the crowd before anyone could stop him. Khan, recovering and humbled, asked for him later, but no one knew his full name. On the cleaning company's roster, he was just EB, an independent contractor. By the next morning, he had already tendered his resignation. He was never seen at the Ethelred Tower again, because a hero's work is done not for the applause, but because it needs to be done. The people in that boardroom never knew that the man they had ignored for years was Elias, the Ghost Barents, once the world's most renowned high-altitude rescue specialist. A man who had conquered Everest without oxygen, who had saved 24 climbers in the Himalayas after an avalanche. A man who retired into anonymity after a tragic accident where he couldn't save his own partner, seeking a quiet penance in the vertical silence of the city. He didn't want another medal. He didn't want another headline. He just wanted to be invisible. We live in a world of glass towers, looking out, but rarely seeing what's right in front of us. We see the uniform, not the person. We see the job, not the history. But sometimes, a crisis shatters the glass, and for a brief moment, we get to see the everyday hero who was standing there all along. So, the next time you look up at a skyscraper, think of the figures suspended against the sky. They might be more than just window washers. They might be ghosts of the mountains watching over us all. If this story moved you, share it, and subscribe to The Everyday Hero, where we believe the greatest stories are the ones that are never told. We'll see you in the next one.